Yeah, so very good afternoon to everyone. And I am Dr. Rohit Sinha, I am from Department of Technology. And today I will be talking about a topic professional ethics in research. So I think this topic is very much of use to all the students, whether it be PhD students, MBA students, or PhD students, because at one time during the later stages of your thesis work, you will be doing research, you will be publishing papers, so you should know what are the basic research ethics which are involved in doing research, executing research, and finding publishing. So, what is research ethics? So research ethics involve the application of fundamental ethical principles to plan, conduct, and publish research. So all three parts, your planning, how you execute your research, and finally how you publish, involves a set of rules and regulations which is called research ethics. So why research ethics is needed? Why there is such a fuss about research ethics? Because these things started later in 1960s when people were saying that ethical principles were not followed by many of the practitioners, both in basic sciences and in clinical sciences, especially the things which were done during the Second World War, during the concentration camps. There were no set guidelines set to how to do with research with human subjects and with animals. And so taking all these considerations, there were a set of research ethics which were laid down, and which I'll be covering in my next slide. So the aim of these ethics is basically to generate knowledge, which is true and which avoids error. So if you do your research in an ethical way, it means you're following proper guidelines, you're taking proper controls, you're doing the research in a way in which it gives a result which is reproducible. So it gives authenticity of to your research. And if you are a good researcher and there is your work is acclaimed and is reproducible, people will more and more try to collaborate with you because they know that if they share the idea with you, you won't steal their idea and publish with you on it. So a good the practice of a good research ethic is not only good for you as a sole investigator, but also helps in a collaborative science. So more and more people will come to you, they will collaborate with you, and they will share their idea because they know you are a person who follows a good ethical principle in research. Then a good research ultimately is a reproducible research and which has a pronounced effect on society. So there is a public acceptance of the research. And the more your research is reproducible across the world, more and more grants will be given because it's a public money. So it's tax money which is given for research. So the government is also very keen and happy to give you money because they think you are a good researcher with a credible record. So that's why a good ethical principle is needed to execute research. So what are the research ethical principles guiding the planning and execution of projects? So in case of research in human subjects, between 1974 to 1978, there was a meeting held in US, and the report and the guidelines which were set were known as the Bellman report. So these are the guiding principles, three main guiding principles which were laid down to do human research. The first was respect for person, second was beneficence, and the third was justice. So what is respect for human subject, a person? So respect for a person is understanding the autonomy of a person, of a human being on whom you want to conduct the research. So he should be well informed of the research. So whenever you do a research on human subjects, you should inform him very well about what are the benefits, what are the risks involved in the research, so that he should be well informed, and you should inform him in a way in which he can comprehend and understand. So if your talk with the person in the subject should be informative at the same time, it should be comprehensive enough. And if he has some problem like mental disability or children's, then you should ask assistance by people who can explain it to the subject. And finally, it should volunteer himself. There should be no coercion or influence on the person to enroll in the research project. So that is why this concept of informed consents come from this report. So it should be a consent which is well informed to the person on which who is being enrolled in the research. The second guiding principle on human research is beneficence. So beneficence actually is the motto is that whatever research you do on human subjects should not be harmful to them. So it's what is the benefit to risk ratio involved. So in any case, the benefit should outweigh the risk. It's only then you should proceed with the research. So doing no harm is the very important principle which should be followed in doing that human research. And third important thing is justice. So in early time when this government report was not framed, there was conditions, situations it was seen that research was being conducted on poor people in public wards, and they were not very rich, and they were ethnic minorities. So and in the private wards, when rich people were there, they were not enrolled in research. So this was something in which the justice was not done to the people. The research, the risk of the research was being pushed to the poor people or people who were really being influenced in a very easy way, and the rich and influential people were left out. And what the benefit? They were reaping the benefits of the research, whereas the risks were being imposed on the poor people. So this was a very important concern by the committee people who formed this, that it should be equally distributed across all the subjects, whether we're poor or rich. We should not focus on a specific group of people who will bear the risk and the benefits will be reaped by them. So there should be a justice and how you include the subjects in the research, and of course it should be always the benefit which should outweigh. So in no way you should conduct a research in which you think the risk may be more than benefit you can. And none of the subjects which are in the ethnic minorities or kids who don't understand what they are being worked upon should be exploited in this. Now, moving to the animal ethics situations in which most of the basic science work is being done. So there's a lot of controversy also in whether we should do animal experimentation or not. Because nowadays, especially in European Union, there's a lot of pro-animal welfare groups which are advocating that both in schools and in research institutes, animals should be not used for research. But we all know that before any drug which makes it to the clinical trials has to undergo preclinical experimentation, and we do use non-human primates and mice, mammals for research. So there was because of this conflict between the government that whether research, basic research should involve animals or not. There were three R's which were laid down. So now whenever we do experiment, there are three things we have to understand. So whether we can exclude animals from the research and use other alternative methods like computer modeling or in silico approaches to understand the physiology, or can do experiment using in vitro or organic cells. So if it is possible that the same conclusion could be achieved by using non-animal approach, that should be promoted. But in case it is not possible and you have to use animals for your research, specifically mammals, then you have to use them in a justified way. So you have to use statistical methods so that you can minimize the number of animals you are taking, so that you receive enough power of your experiment to deduce a meaningful conclusion and without sacrificing a lot of animals. So a good statistical approach is needed now to justify the number of animals you're taking, you're sacrificing for your research work. So this is called reduction. So first is replacement, second is reduction. And of course, if you're using animal, then you have to refine the way in which you deal with the animal experimentation. You have to devise methods in which you reduce the pain which the animals suffer. So these are three R's which are very important while doing animal work. And a lot of in-depth information on the animal experimentation will be basically for the PhD student will be given by a separate course which will be done by Dr. Baranwal. So I won't go deep into that part. Now, my main focus is actually now on ethics involved in research publication. So because this is something which really is left out when a new student come and his guide asks him to write a paper. So the first attraction is to get read so many reviews and just copy paste some part of it in your paper. Because when we were also doing, like I was doing my PhD, they were not set guidelines there that how you have to, what is plagiarism and what you have to take from the literature, what you don't have to just copy paste. So these are something which are being recognized because a lot of retraction are happening. And unfortunately, in India, that I think in 2019 there was a list of retraction by many of the institute in Lucknow itself. So this is a big concern in basically in India. It's a big concern that all investigators in India are just copy pasting material from the West. So we have to be very important, very cautious about publication, and whether it be a review article or original article, it is a very big concern now. So the first ethical criteria when doing research publication is deciding the authorship. So there were cases in which the authorship, how who is the author and who is not the author, was a little bit confusing. It was just the discretion of the corresponding author to put author in the paper. So because of that confusion, there was a criteria which was made or guideline made by the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, ICMJE, which is now being followed by most of the medical journals and also the basic science journals. So it says that substantial contribution to the study, conception and design, data acquisition, analysis and interpretation is one of the basic criteria which will decide whether a person should belong to the as an author in this manuscript or not. He should be involved in the drafting or revising the article for intellectual content. So even though if he has not performed the experiment, but he has drafted or revised it with a substantial intellectual input, then also he makes his place in the author list. Other than that, final approval of the final version should be done by all the authors. So you should not, none of the authors should be left out from the seeing the final draft of the manuscript. And then agreement to be accountable for all the aspects of the work related to the accuracy or integrity of any part of the work. So if there is a flaw and a fraud found in an article, all authors do take responsibility, but definitely the main responsibility falls on the corresponding and the first author. But if the author has, like, there is some analysis, specific analysis done by some author, so he is the one actually responsible for that. So even though the article has to be retracted, if it is flawed in any way, it has to be retracted. But all the authors, when submitting the manuscript, whenever you submit a manuscript, there is a clause in which you agree that all the authors have read and have agreed with all the work presented in this piece of manuscript. So this is the important criteria of authorship. Now, what is not ethical is these things. So this, I would like you to go to Elsevier. So they have given a very good guideline of criteria in research publication ethics. So in that, it has been shown that there are two types of important things which really are found in journals. One is this ghost authorship, and one is this gift and guest authorship problems. And definitely misrepresenting the scientist relation to the work is also a big concern. So what is ghost authorship? So ghost authorship is generally when you usually hire a professional writer to write your manuscript. In many of the countries which are not native English speaking countries, so they hire professional writers to write the manuscript. But what is unethical is that if you don't mention their name in the acknowledgement section. So professional writers, paid writers are not in the author list, but they should be acknowledged in the acknowledgement section. If you leave them out, then you're discrediting their effort, and this is considered unethical. So this is called ghost authorship. So you're just, that person is just left out. Okay, so this is unethical. What is gift and guest authorship? This is very common in many of the state universities and colleges, that so you have a friend, you want to please him, so even when he has not done anything in your research work, you just put his name in your article, and you think that that person will put your name also in his article just to increase your publications. So this is called gift authorship. So this is considered unethical, and whenever we submit paper, they have agreement to you have to check out that thing that they have performed some work on this author list. Otherwise, it is considered unethical. And what is guest authorship is something also done in universities, in some colleges, that you put the name of like a big person in that field. So, or you put the name of the sometime in the head of department and things, and then this is called as guest authorship. So they have not worked, they have not participated in the study, but just to please them, you just put their name there. So this is the problem with the publication nowadays. So this is a big concern, and this has been noted as the unethical practice in publication. So you have to be cautious about that thing. The second important thing is competing interest. So this has a lot to do both for the authors and also for the reviewers. So what is competing interest? So by definition, when an investigator, author, editor, or reviewer has a financial or personal interest or belief that could affect his or her objectivity or inappropriately influence his or her action, a potential competing interest exists. Such relationships are also known as dual commitment, competing interest, or competing loyalties. So what it is? So it is like an action and undisclosed relationship that may pose a competing interest. Now, for example, uh, as an author, whenever you're sending your manuscript and you don't disclose a relationship with, like, you have your work is being funded by some agencies or drug pharma companies which are funding your work. So you're trying to present, in some cases it may be thought that you're trying to present the data positive so that it suits the compound which they are advocating. So this is the competing interest. So you have to declare that this work is being funded by so and so company, and whenever you're submitting the manuscript. So this is the important aspect, that in any of the journals, whenever you submit, there's a section of conflict of interest. So you have to declare that they have no conflict of interest, and your work is not being influenced by the person who is sponsoring it. So if it is a drug or pharma company which is being funding your research, you have to disclose. It's not like the journal will reject if he's sponsoring, but that should be kept in mind when the reviewers review, so that you are not manipulating the data which suits the company which is sponsoring. So that is and also the same thing goes when you are reviewing a manuscript. So whenever you are reviewing a manuscript and the author is known to you, either he's a colleague who has worked with you in the last 5 years, or he's a person in relation with you, then you have to declare to the journal that I possibly cannot review this manuscript because this person is known to you. Because if the editor finds out this, then it doesn't look nice, and he can give you a letter that you should have disclosed this conflict. So it's both way. The reviewer also and the author also have to disclose. And now this is a very important problem which happens. I was telling that copy pasting things. So this is called plagiarism, and this is one of the most common type of publication misconduct. When an author deliberately uses another work without permission, credit, or acknowledgement. Plagiarism takes form from literal copying to paraphrasing some else work and include data, words, phrases, ideas, and concepts. So the first type of plagiarism is literal copy. So it's just copy pasting the whole paragraph or even most of the substantial part of the manuscript in your manuscript, and without citing or giving credit to the original author. So this is a very serious misconduct, and this will automatically cause retraction of the paper if it is found, because nowadays there are a lot of software available with the journals which can scan and find out the similarity between the manuscript you are submitting and the manuscript already on the permit or forms portal. So if they find a substantial similarity, they will ask you to retract the paper, and that brings damage to you as an investigator and to the on the institute also. So this is a very serious problem. Then instead of literal copying, some people also do substantial copying and paraphrasing. So instead of just copying the whole of the manuscript, other people's manuscript to your, You sometimes copy few of the paragraphs and sentences. So that is also considered unethical, but not if you are citing the original. So even paraphrasing is not the way to go without citing the original. You can change the tense, you can change the word, but that can also be detected by the software, and that is considered unethical. So whenever you're taking something from some paper, you have to cite the original reference, because if you cite the original reference, then it is not unethical. But still, the journal may ask you to change the way you are writing, because it should not exactly look like copy paste from a paper. But definitely you have to cite. If you don't cite, then it is a very big problem. And then text recycling. Text recycling is also type of paraphrasing, with just you recycling the portion of, and sometimes you just use your own old manuscript words to use in your new manuscript. So that is also to some extent considered unethical. So you have to, this is called self plagiarism. So you just recycle your word in your old manuscript to a new manuscript. So this is a major concern in publication. And then simultaneous submissions. So this is also, and sometimes this is not, many of the researchers I also met, they are not very sure why simultaneous submission is bad. So what they do is that you have a research article, and you, just because you want to save time or you're not sure whether that journal will accept, you submit your one manuscript to two journals at the same time. So this is considered unethical. And in some cases only this is allowed when a journal itself asks you that they have a provision of simultaneous submission to its sister journal. So sometimes journals have their subcategories. They can allow you to simultaneously submit your paper to all the journals of that publication group simultaneously, but only when they allow. Otherwise, you cannot do a simultaneous submission, because that is considered unethical. So you send a paper, you do the revision. If it is rejected, after you get the rejection letter, then only you can send to another journal. If it is under review, under revision, then also you cannot send. So the way, like, it is under revision and you think you cannot revise it, so you write a letter to the editor that we want to withdraw this manuscript. So once you have withdrawn and the editor has said, okay, fine, you have this article has been withdrawn, then only you can send it to the another journal. So this is the proper way to submit manuscript. So simultaneous submission is unethical, and by chance, if both journals do publish your work, it is considered duplicate publication, because at the same time the reviewers are different. They don't know whether the same manuscript was considered at the same time. But then what happens? So it's not something which you will be very happy about, because when it finally comes to the PubMed, and that then there could be it could be detected, and when this is detected, both the manuscript have to be withdrawn or retracted. So never try simultaneous submission. Always wait till the first journal sends you back, then you can submit to another journal. And duplication is the same thing. You need just recycle the text from two manuscripts similarly. This is also considered unethical. So now this important part is considered research fraud. So plagiarism is you just recycling text. This is even a more serious problem. This is called research fraud. So research fraud is publishing data or conclusion that were not generated by experiment or observation, but by invention or data manipulation. There are two kind of research scientific publications, two kind in research and scientific publishing, and which is called fabrication, which is actually making up research data and result for recording or reporting them, and the other is falsification. So there's a difference between them, as manipulating research material, images, data, equipment, or process. Falsification includes changing or omitting data or result in such a way that the research is not accurately represented. A person might falsify data to make it fit with the desired end result of the study. So fabrication is something in which the data itself doesn't exist. So suppose you are doing, you have not done an experiment, but you make a histogram or a graph to show that these things were changing. So it's just you are making up the data. There was no experiment done. So this is called fabrication. So without doing any experiment, you have a data. So that is something people do to publish their work. The other is falsification. Falsification is that you have different, you have n number of subjects, and to suit your hypothesis,
there are a lot of outliers which you think are outlier and they are skewing your data. So even though statistically you can remove some outliers, but some people what they do, they remove a lot of samples from there just to make use of few samples which are matching in the trend. So this is falsification. So you omit some of the important data which is actually affecting your result to make the result matching your hypothesis. And other also way of falsification is manipulation of images. So especially in the basic science work, you manipulate the gel bands or the sequencing data so that it just fits in your hypothesis. So this is called manipulation or falsification, and this is a big concern in research publication. And even though initially before these softwares were not available, people used to falsify data and it was not clear that how to falsify. But now with the new softwares, most of the journals have their softwares which can detect falsification. So if you are manipulating your a band, a hydrous gel, or a Western blot, there are softwares which can detect that manipulation is being taken place. And when this happens, they write to the editor, the editor write back to you to give your raw data. So especially for PhD students, it is recommended that at least for 10 years, I guess 10 years, you have to keep your raw data with you. Because if there is a, sometimes it is a false alarm. So they think it is a manipulation, but just to be sure, you have to provide them with the raw data. So if you cannot provide them the raw data, then automatically they will ask you to retract it, and that is a big problem. So always keep the raw data and never fabricate the data. Okay, so that is a problem, because if they ask you to show all the original data and they don't see any result which matches your histogram which you are showing your graph you see, it means that it was a totally fabricated. The experiment didn't exist. So this is a big concern, and this is something which is also nowadays coming as a unethical practice in science, although it is in many places for getting desired number of publications, uh, for promotion or for getting grants. What people do is that they a big study, they just slice it up. They make small papers and then publish it. So initially there was a controversy whether it is unethical or not, but nowadays it is considered that breaking up or segmenting data from a single study and creating different manuscripts is considered unethical. Why it is considered unethical? Because first of all, it looks like there are many studies supporting a hypothesis, but actually is the same author which is making different small papers out of a big study. So ideally, that study should have been published as a unit itself, not fragmented. But you just make use of some data in the big study and publish small papers. So it wastes the time of the reviewer. It gives a false impression that there are so many papers showing this thing. So these things, this is also considered actually unethical. But that should be discussed with your lead author, that how you should do that. But this is something which really is happening many times. That just to increase your publication number, you just cut your big study into small part and just publish it. So these are some of the points which are actually very important, and as students which are just joining, you have to do research, you have to publish work. This is something which you have to be very careful nowadays. It was not that big a problem maybe 10 years back, but now all the softwares can detect even a minor fabrication, falsification, plagiarism. So it is a big concern nowadays, and it can actually ruin your career if it is found that there is a falsification and fabrication of data. So publication is a must, but publish it in an ethical way. Thank you. So any questions?